Hello everyone, and in this lecture we will be building a tags view in SwiftUI. You'll be learning about how you can create a HStack with a wrapping and dynamic with features. Alright everyone, so now that you have seen what we'll be building in this lecture, let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we need is some sort of an array. So let's go ahead and create an array. There we go. You can see that I'm simply adding some random words in it. There's also a picture, an icon, emoji of a rabbit, just to check it out. Now, the next thing would be to create our custom control. So let's go ahead and get started with that. I'm going to create a structure and I will call it tags view. This will be our SwiftUI view. So it will implement or conform to the view protocol. In order to conform to the view protocol, we need to implement body. And for now, I'm just going to go ahead and say tags view, and that's it. We can go and update our actual application, and we can display tags view. Let's go ahead and refresh our view. Okay, so we can see the tags view is getting displayed. Now, in order for the tags to be displayed, we need some sort of ability to pass in the tags to the tags view. This means that the tags view will also take in the items, which will be just an array of strings, and that's it. Next, we can go over here into our tags view and make sure that we are passing in the tags. We're just going to call it words because we have the words in an array that we want to pass and want to display as tags. Now we're passing it to the tags view. Now this is where things will become a little bit different. Instead of modifying the actual view and moving view up and down, we are going to make sure that our tags are in a grouped or in a pieces of chunks so that we can easily display them. So if we try to display just the tag itself in a horizontal stack, HStack, they're just going to go in this direction and we will have tags like this. We will have one tag, we will have two tags, three tags, four tags, but it will simply go in that direction. What we want to do is to have few tags that can fit based on different conditions, and then some other tags can come onto this one. And some, if you have more smaller tags that can fit in one line, in one horizontal row, then those can fit. So it depends on if they're able to fit or not. And if they're able to fit, then we will be able to adjust our UI automatically based on the structure of the items, and we can create that. So in this case, what we will do is we will have to make sure that we have something called grouped items. So I'm going to go ahead and create another array. I will call it grouped items. And this will be an array of arrays. So the inner array will be the actual group. And we will initialize it kind of like just an empty string. All right. Okay, so we can pass in the items. We will have grouped items. Now, at what point should we perform this grouping? We can go ahead and create a constructor. We will allow the user to pass in the items. And inside over here, we can first set the items, which is simply an array of words. And we can go ahead and say grouped items, create grouped items. So we're going to pass in the items, and that is going to return us the grouped items. Now, obviously, there is no function called create grouped items, so we will go ahead and create that. So private function create grouped items, which will take in the items. And eventually, and that's the beauty of this function, is that eventually this function is going to return us an array of arrays. Let's go ahead and build it. Okay, so now this is the point where it becomes a little bit more complicated. So just to keep the warning away, I'm just going to return an array of array, which obviously doesn't really make that much sense because it's completely an array with an empty array. So now we have to make sure that whatever items that we are passing, which are simply words, and each word can have a different length, but we don't really know the length of this, meaning not the length or number of characters, but the actual width of this if we were to display it in a text control. Well, luckily, we can find the length of this. And the reason or the how we're going to find it will be based on how we will calculate it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I will simply say for each word in items, I will go through each word in items. And when we're going through each word, we will go ahead and create a label. All right. So I will go ahead and create a label, and that will be a UI label. Also, inside the create grouped items, I will create an internal grouped items because eventually it will return something. And then I will make sure that we return these grouped items. These are not the same grouped items that we created on the top, which is the main grouped items, or which is the property grouped items for a tags view. These are just some local variable called grouped items. Now, when we are iterating through these particular words, let's go ahead and build it first. We will create a label. We will assign that particular label, the text. You can see that this label is a UIKit label. We're simply assigning it the word. We will also make sure that the label is calling size to fit, so it kind of adjusts itself to form a frame based on the word that we are assigning. So if we have a word, which is, let's say, cat, it's going to go ahead and create a label with a size that can fit cat. But obviously, if we had a word called aeroplane, then it will create a label that will fit the width of the word aeroplane. So size to fit is going to make sure that the label is adjusted with the frame that will fit the word. Okay, great. Now, let's go ahead and now get the view width, or you can even call it label width. So let's call it label width. And we will get the label frame.size.width. Now, each label should have a little bit more padding around it, which is 16 on each side. So I'm just going to add 32 more to it. All right. Next, we will check if the width, the total width that we are doing, plus view width, or in this case, label width, and I will go into more details, plus some sort of a factor, is less than the screen width. So you can see a lot of things come into play over here, but I'll explain to you in a moment what's going on. First of all, let's go ahead and create these couple of things. We are going to create the width. So here's our width. We will also create something called a temporary items. So let's go ahead and create temporary items. Screen width is simply the width of the screen. So that will be a constant, and we can display something like this over here, getting the screen width from UI screen. All right. Okay. So what exactly are we trying to do over here? So we're calculating the width of the word. The word will be coming from this particular array. So the first word might be, you can see it's pretty long. Action movies are good. Let's go ahead and make this word just action. All right. So we calculate the width or the frame for that particular label that is containing the word action. We add 32 to it because on the left and the right side there is a padding for a label that is 16 points. So we just add 32 to it. Now we're checking that if the width, this is a running width of every type or every different word that we're entering, plus the label width, plus 32. This is kind of like an extra buffer that we're adding. If it's greater than screen width, now we have to make sure that, sorry, it's not greater than, it's less than screen width. So this means that if we are adding something over here, so we're going to take this word, and then we're going to take this word, and we're going to take this word. So it can only fit like 3 of them. So if all 3 combined width for all 3 of them, that will be calculated by this width. And the label width is the actual view width, or this label that we're creating. And the screen width, which is the actual width of the screen, is this one. All right. So this is kind of like a calculation that we're doing. The width over here is basically the running width of how many things we can fit in one particular row. The label width is the width of the individual labels that we are creating. And 32 is just some extra stuff that we're adding so that they are not at the corner. And screen width is obviously the width of the screen, which depends on the size. So for iPhone 12 Pro Max, it might be 428 points. So if it's less than the screen width, then the first thing I'm going to do is we will add width plus equals to label width, because this means that we are calculating the running width. We can add label width to the width, and then temporary items dot append the word. Now, why temporary items? What is the reason for temporary items? So if we are running this and we can fit one of them, so we are going to add that word into the temporary items, because we know that that particular word with a label width, or that particular label with a word action, can be fit in one line. Now, if we have another item which is a little bit smaller, that's going to keep adding until this condition is actually false, meaning maybe there's one more item that you want to add, but it's already exceeded the screen width. So in that particular case, we will go to else. We will go ahead, if that is exceeded, we will get the last width that you did. So I will call it label width. So this is the label width of the item that you wanted to add, but there was not enough space to add in that particular row. So we will keep track of that particular width and we will assign it to the width. We will take the grouped items dot append, and we will append all the temporary items that we had. So there were 3 items in the temporary items array because we were able to add 3 items in one particular row. So we will add that to the grouped items. We will remove everything from temporary items by calling remove all. And we still have that word that we were not able to add it because it was, well, we ran out of width in that particular row. So we will go ahead and make sure that that particular width is added. So temporary items.append and new element, which in this case will be the word. And right before we are exiting this particular grouped items, we also want to make sure that we have entered everything in the temporary items. So right before we're doing that, if there are any temporary items left, make sure that you're appending it. So append temp items, so that we're not leaving anything behind. And that's it. That's the whole formula for creating these grouped items. Now all is remaining to do is to actually go into our view and display these things. So right now it's simply displaying the tags view, but obviously we want to make sure that we are going through this and displaying the tags. So I'm just going to start with vertical stack. Go ahead and run a for each on the grouped items. The ID will be self. We will get grouped items, we will get sub items in. Now this grouped item will be an array of arrays. So we are right now trying to iterate the main array, and inside this each item will be an array of itself. And now we can go ahead and perform an iteration on the sub items. So we will go ahead and create a HStack because we do want items to be laid out horizontally. And next, we can go ahead and perform on sub items. And all of these items are basically string in the end anyways. So word in, and now we can display the word. All right. Let's go ahead and resume this. And you can already see that it's working. I mean, it is displaying all the items. So that is great. Let's first also make sure that the alignment is leading so that everything is left aligned. And we will also make sure that it's a little bit on the top. So just add a spacer so that everything kind of moves on the top. Now these items don't really have any padding associated with it. So let's go ahead and add a little bit of padding. There we go, looking already nice. You can see how they're arranged, right? Now let's go ahead and give some sort of a background color. So we can go ahead and give any color you want, obviously. Just going to go ahead and give like some sort of a blue color. And for a foreground color, I'm going to go ahead and put it as white. And it might be a good idea to perform a clip shape. So let's go ahead and give it shapes. We'll go with rounded rectangle. And radius is something that you can come up with on your own. I'm just going to say 10 and continuous. But it's completely up to you on your own, whatever radius you want to give. And this is what it actually looks like. You can see that all of these items are now displayed in tags and they are jumping onto new lines. Now, what happens if we want to display or we want to test with some other data? All right. Now, one of the dependencies that I've added, and it's not really part of this particular lecture. I mean, you can create your own words and that's perfectly fine. But one of the dependencies that I'm using is on lorem ipsum. And this is just for testing the data. So if I want to create more words, I can go ahead and add more words over here, but I can always use this particular library, lorem swiftum, to create some dummy words for me. So I don't have to. So words equals to lorem dot words. And how many words do you actually want to create? So I'm going to say I want to create, let's say, 50 words dot split, because it's not really going to give us the error. And the separator that we're going to use is an empty separator. And we can now then finally convert it to string. All right, there we go. I think that should hopefully do it. Let's go ahead and run it. So now hopefully it will give us 50 different words that we can see. And now you can see all the 50 words. They look really good. There are a couple of words, probably this one that I can see, that it was displayed in new line. Now you may or may not want to go to new line. So let's go ahead and see what else does it display. If I keep refreshing this, you can see it is displaying different things. Sometimes it displays new line, but sometimes it doesn't display new line. All right. So if you don't want new line, then you can go always and you can say fixed size. Then it will always try to display everything in one particular line. Now, if you do that, you can see it's kind of like very much on the corner. This means that you have to adjust this particular number. Instead of 32, 55 if you give, it gives a nice padding. But this is kind of up to you how you may decide. So if I go ahead and now try to change it, you can see that it kind of displays nicely. Let's go ahead and see that if you put somewhere, there we go. And that is your application. Now, sometimes if you see, you can also make sure that your VStack can perform scrolling. So in order to perform scrolling, only thing we need to do is to put it inside a scroll view. And then it will automatically start scrolling. So if I go ahead and run the application, you can see that I'm able to scroll. Let's go ahead and instead of 50, let's go with 100. So simply change that to 100. 100 random words. And let's go ahead and run it again. And there we go. Looks pretty good. We're able to create the tags. And one of the things that you may have noticed over here is that we didn't really change anything from the point of putting the labels in a different place or somehow shifting the labels or doing alignment guide. We simply thought and in the terms of structuring the actual data. And that gave us a little bit more control of how we want to display those things. So this is, I think, really cool. You can download all of this code. I will add as a gist, and you can download this code also. And it is also available if you're watching on Udemy. It's also available as a resource download. All right. Thank you so much. Hey everyone, I really hope that you have enjoyed this video. And if you want to support my channel, then check out my courses on Udemy. I also have a Patreon page, and the link to the Patreon page is right there in the YouTube description. And the link to all of these courses is also right there in the YouTube description. You can check out my courses on MVVM design, RX Swift, SwiftUI, React, Async, Innovate, concurrency course, which just got released, Swift for intermediate advanced developers, core data, combine, and much, much more. So I really hope that you check out my courses, enjoy the courses. The links are right there in the YouTube description. Thank you so much.